Tony D and Little Joan, and this is a screenwriter's take on Daylight's End, a zombie movie starring Johnny Strong, and who's also one of the producers, and Chad Law, who's also one of the producers, and Lance Hendrick, who's also one of the actors. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy Heart in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 15, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Now, so I really wanted to like this movie, but I can't really recommend it. It could have been good. They had enough money, I think, to make it work, but it seemed to have a few too many elements for the budget. So, when you're doing a zombie movie, one of the most important aspects of any movie with supernatural creatures is you must define how they can be killed. All right? So, these zombies were created by some sort of pandemic, it's implied, which is fine. That's a perfectly valid way, but that implies certain things, right? It implies that's a funny stuff. It implies that they are something that were created out of, a disease, so that they all may still be alive. Now, if they're supernatural, then it really opens up to many different things. This movie tries to jam in everything, and it doesn't work for the zombies. So it has a great opening with, and you see the logos there. It's a little bit like 28 Days Later. It's like, oh, there's a disease, and that's how the zombies come. But then in the opening scene with Johnny Strong, he finds a zombie hiding inside a freezer, pulls it out into the sunlight, shoots it open, and the zombie pops out and then burns. But the effect isn't that great. It's more like an actress writhing on the ground, covered in black soot, and some smoke coming off of her. It's not a very distinct effect. Like, she doesn't burst into flame, right? Or she doesn't burst into, ashes like the vampires in Blade, let's say. She doesn't melt. It's a very low-key effect. And if you're going to do something so low-key that visually it's not very, visual, then you need to do it a lot in order to keep establishing that these zombies absolutely cannot go out in a day, and the moment they do, they just start burning and they collapse on the ground. There are a lot of scenes in this movie where you're not sure if the zombies are outside or not. And a lot of this is stock footage here. You're just not sure. The only time you're totally 100% sure is at the beginning of the movie, when he does the thing with the freezer, and the end of the movie where he fights the main zombie, the leader zombie, if you will. And he burns up in the sun. Sorry, spoilers. I'm not really ruining anything for you because there's not much to ruin in this movie. You can kind of see it coming a mile away. But sorry if I spoiled it for you. So I can't really recommend the movie. I kind of watch all the zombie movies. Lance Henriksen is fine. He's a good actor. Johnny Strong is okay. He looks the part. But they don't really give him any cool lines. You might as well play it up a little bit. There's a female actress in it. I forget her name. She's okay. But they don't really give the actors much to do. They needed better lines. It just needed a better script. So you're not missing much with Daylight's End. At best, this would be a movie you could put on in the background of a Halloween party and kind of forget about it. The action's not bad, but the scenes with the dialogue are completely forgettable. And it has some elements of 28 Days Later, The Walking Dead, and a few other zombie movies, but it doesn't really have its own distinct thing. It's kind of got too many zombie or supernatural elements, and it's not fun, it's not all that exciting, and there's a lot of red herrings that don't sort of pan out. All right, so that's my non-spoiler review. I hate to say it, Lance Henriksen deserved better. Really, all the actors did. You needed a better script. Needed a much better, stronger script. The characters, I mean, a few of them had personality, but they don't do much with that personality. They just kind of say a couple of lines that are a little bit dramatic and then they die. All right, so that concludes my mostly non-spoiler review. Here's the spoilers. First act, Johnny is a lonesome drifter. His name's not Johnny, though. It's the actor's name. His name is Rourke. Again, very generic hero name. You might as well... The actor's name is Johnny Strong. That's a better name. I would have called him Johnny Strong. But, you know, Rourke is on his own, wandering the desolate wastelands, and he kills a zombie in the most inconvenient way possible by chaining up the freezer and dragging it out into the sunlight and then shooting off the lock and then letting it burn in the sun. And I don't think he shoots it, but like, just like, why did he even bother to waste the bullets? Like, why not, I don't know, bang on the lid and run away and let the zombie chase him outside? And if she didn't chase him outside, he could have just shot her. So that there's not really a lot of thinking going on in this script. Next scene, he's roaming around an abandoned town when a car pulls up, a police car, with 3 cops and a woman, and they see another woman sitting in the middle of the road with a baby, nursing the baby, kind of. But of course, it's a doll, and she's crazy. And she's just a distraction so marauders can shoot the cops and I don't know what, because it turns into a giant gunfight where they waste a ton of bullets. And in this world, again, you got to be thinking, bullets are at a premium. You're going to waste them on 3 guys who are well armed to get basically to get the girl. That's what I guess their objective was. You must be really, really horny and have a ton of bullets at your disposal, because you need bullets in this world, because they're constantly talking about how, oh, those things come out at night and they're killing us. So if it's that dangerous, are you really going to waste them raiding, trapping these cops just to get the girl? And I mean, it's a ton of bullets being shot. And then Johnny shows up, of course, and saves her after the cops are all killed, and basically kills all the marauders. Except for one who's just lying there dying, and they just leave him to die. And so they're not really zombies, because they run and then they burn in the sunlight, which is more of like a vampire thing. So when you overlap like that, you really got to make a distinction of like what these creatures are. And they don't say zombies or anything, but they're clearly something akin to zombies. So they needed to make that clarification. They just keep calling those things. Okay, so then the girl promises Johnny refuge in their hideout. He goes, and that's led by Lance Henriksen. There's a bunch of other cops there, and they basically say, we'll let you stay here, but we don't trust you, so we're going to take your weapons away. Meanwhile, the zombies in the city, which is the city of Dallas, have been attacking the police station relentlessly, and they're getting closer and closer to taking over. And their objective, the survivors, was to find a plane in order to escape. I assume to some sort of island or whatever. It's not a great plan because later in the movie, when they get trapped in the building because their exit point is this ramp out of a garage, which is really poorly mapped, but I sort of got it. And then the idea was they were going to load up into these cars, drive to the airport in the day, where they would then board the plane, fly to someplace safe. But when the zombies, organized by the alpha zombie, block the garage with cars, they realize that they don't have enough time to remove the cars and get out, which is debatable, but okay. But the next step is, well, why don't we just get other cars? There's a million abandoned cars in the city. To which one guy says, yeah, but they probably have dead batteries and their tires are dry rotted, which would apply to the plane, and that's a problem. It also, we don't know if the plane has fuel. And of course, there seems to be an unlimited number of zombies. And Johnny Strong is hunting him because he's after this alpha male, which only becomes clear later in the movie. And so there's a bunch of drama at the police station, which kind of goes nowhere, where the zombies sort of break in, kill a bunch of people, and then Johnny breaks out and saves people, and now they trust him. And now Johnny comes up with this plan. All the zombies congregate in this hotel in Dallas, so they're going to sneak in and blow the place up. To which somebody smart says, why don't we just burn the place down? To which Johnny says, well, they'll just scatter. That would be mostly true unless they could cover all the exits, which they could, and light the fire in the day, which they could, and then shoot the zombies as they come out. Because if you lit the fire in the bottom of the hotel, all the zombies trapped in the above floors would have no place to go. They would all get burned up. Their only other recourse would be to jump out of the window. They can't jump out in the day, so they'd have to wait for the fire to burn for 12 hours before they could make their move. So that plan was a perfectly valid plan, which they don't do. Instead, Johnny Strong wants the plan of explosive to blow them all up. That's also not a bad plan, except that for some insane reason, they decide that in order to plant the bomb, it has to be planted where the zombies are, and they pick a guy to sneak across the sleeping zombies to plant the bomb. And I can clearly see in the shot that as he goes over to a pillar on the other side of the room, and it's clear in that shot there's a guy standing behind a pillar. You could just barely see him. And of course, he jumps out and kills that dude, and the bomb apparently is remote detonated anyway, so the zombies are all triggered. They all start running, and then Johnny triggers it, and it blows up a bunch of zombies, but apparently not enough, which again kind of doesn't make sense. Like, if you were going to plant a bomb in the hotel, wouldn't you plant the kind of bomb that would destroy the hotel? Like, it would completely collapse it, crushing all the zombies? Kind of didn't make sense. The whole map of the movie doesn't make sense, which is also bad. They make allusions to where things are, but it doesn't, visually it doesn't come together. The backup plan is to get these vehicles, which in the course of dialogue they establish, well, that's a bad idea because you got to replace the batteries and possibly the tires. However, one of the characters does find a bus which has enough room to carry the 40 people, because they say they have about 40 people, away from the city. But the timing has to be perfect, because if they do it at night, they run the risk of being overwhelmed in the bus, which doesn't seem to jibe with what Johnny Strong was doing. Because Johnny Strong was in a car by himself, and he would just sleep in the car. But you would think you'd just drive once you got out of the city, and Dallas is pretty empty outside of the city. You just keep driving. How are the zombies going to stop you driving? Not really clear. Possibly the highways would be all clogged with abandoned cars and they would eventually get stopped. But seems to me the better plan would have been to try to escape in the bus. The end of the movie is they decide to make a last stand in the police station, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But Johnny implies that if they make the last stand in a police station, the rest of the characters can escape on a bus. So they make a last stand with a bunch of the characters, and they all get killed one by one, except for Johnny, who fights the alpha zombie. And at the climax of that fight, he tricks him into falling outside on the roof, where he burns alive, the alpha zombie who killed his wife and whatever. His wife's name, by the way, is carved into his arm to remind him of his wife's name and the revenge he needs. So he kills the alpha zombie. But then the next scene is he looks out and he sees the bus pull up and it's filled with all the people they saved and they haven't escaped. And it's like, well, now everything's fine because you killed the alpha zombie. But there were a bunch of other zombies. So, and the fact that the fight started at a certain time, and during the fight, they eventually get to the point where they're outside, but it's daylight already, and the timeline doesn't jibe. So I missed the part where they spent the night and then started fighting the zombies. Doesn't seem to make any sense. So, action-wise, the movie was okay. The stunts were nice. They even had a good explanation of why the alpha zombie kept surviving. The end of the movie, you see, he had like a hood, which made sense because of the sun. But then towards the end of the movie, it finally falls off, and you see that underneath he's a soldier, and the reason they kept shooting him in the chest and it didn't work was he had a bulletproof vest on, a military bulletproof vest. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. So there wasn't no thought put into this movie, but you needed to strip it down to something that the filmmakers could make. So I think the sunlight bit, no, that should have went away. Or there should have been more of it. Less of the two-dimensional characters and more of tricking the zombies into the sunlight. Like, if that was a major thing, what you could do is, as the sun's coming up, trick the zombies outside underneath like a tarp that you have set up at a doorway out into the street. And then when the sun comes up, you pull the tarp away and all the zombies are trapped in the sun and they all go, ah! Like something like that. Something clever. This movie didn't do that. And we don't really learn all that much about Johnny other than his wife was killed. We learn about these other characters who all die. Don't really care about them. The main girl character, learned a little bit about her. And they just tell the story of what happened the day the zombies came. And they don't call them zombies, which kind of irks me. They should call them something. I think they'd be better off calling them the infected in this movie rather than those things, but whatever. And they waste a lot of time doing things in zombie movies like, they're no longer the people we thought they were, kind of thing. Like, we get all that. We've all seen enough zombie movies, we know. And they end up shooting a bunch of their own friends who get bit. But overall, the movie just doesn't have enough oomph. It could have been funnier, or it could have been more serious. For it to be more serious, there should have been a more personal attachment to Johnny Strong's character and the survivors, I think. That's what was needed. There was a personal thing between him and the alpha zombie, but that wasn't clear, and the whole zombie thing wasn't clear at all. His plan at the hotel wasn't clear. Nothing in this movie was clear. So they really needed a better map, and they needed somebody to think this out. Like, if they had had a map of the place where they were shooting, and they said, okay, we will lure the zombies in here while you go out this door, get in the bus, and leave. Like, that would have made a certain amount of sense. Instead, they get bogged down in, well, we can't go up the ramp and leave because the zombies blocked it with a bunch of cars. We can't remove the cars fast enough that we could leave on the same day. See, that didn't make any sense. Let's say you took a bunch of cars and the zombies pushed them down there, so they're all like wrecked or whatever. You just need to move enough cars so you can get your cars past them. That might take, you might lose an hour doing that. Maybe 2. That still leaves you a good 10 hours of daylight to get away from the city. And then when they found the bus, it also makes you want to go, why didn't they do that in the first place? The other problem with it is, too, there's this artificial time limit of, well, we won't survive another night in this building. Well, that's clearly not true. I mean, yes, they've been directed by a nefarious alpha zombie, but they have survived up until that point. And the movie contradicts itself because at one point it says the zombies have been ramping up their attacks for days now, or weeks, or ever since we got there, whenever that is. But when Johnny Strong gets there, one of the characters implies, he's after you, Johnny, and it's kind of your fault, which could have been used in the movie had the blocking and the scenes been done in a different way. But it wasn't. So I can't really recommend this movie. It's just, I wouldn't watch it again. It's a bit tedious at times. There's no really exciting characters in it. Just a lot of people pretending to be afraid. You know, and again, the cast is fine. They just needed a better script. You know? Johnny's a cool looking dude for the role. I think they needed to give him some cool lines. Something funny. Something mean. You know, something about, he could have said some cool lines about the Marauders. But it's a little too close to Walking Dead and 28 days later, and then with the sunlight thing, it doesn't really add anything. They probably should have cut that. And just, you know, but you can see that they obviously wanted to establish that in the beginning, so at the end of the movie, when he tricks him outside, it's daylight. There are other ways you could have tricked a zombie, I think. And the problem with zombies in general, even ones that are basically, you know, they're able to move very quickly, is they're suicidal. They make a straight line right to their victims. So because of that, you could set up all kinds of traps between you and the zombies, and they'll just go right into them. They're not going to avoid them. They're not smart enough to avoid them. So you can tell, I think, that they kept reusing these same actors. They only had about 24 actors to be the zombies. That's part of the issue, too. If they had a bigger budget, they could have made this work. Because if you had a bigger budget, you could have CGI'd like thousands of zombies in the street, implying like, well, they're completely surrounded and they can't get out. You also could have done the slower zombies, which would have, to me, they're more menacing if you do the slow zombies. But there are a lot of them. But if you don't have the budget, you don't have the budget. So I don't know what else you could have done. They also shoot a lot of scenes that are obviously in the daylight, but they use a blue filter to imply that they're at night. And that really doesn't work after a while. You can get away with it in quick scenes, but, Yeah, I didn't think it really worked. There's also a guy who's like the panicky guy from the zombie movie. And at one point in the movie, he tries to make a run for it, and he's unsuccessful, and you just go, this guy's just stupid. So it just doesn't come together. Sorry to say. So, Daylight's End, a Johnny Strong movie. I think Johnny deserved better. Definitely Lance Hendricks did. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan. Check us out on all our various links. Check me out all this week. More videos, more fun, and check out the Pineys. We'll see you in the next one.